Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Parikshit Luthra. Here are the big headlines we are tracking this evening. The Indian rupee remains in free fall, hitting a fresh record low once again. $1 now costs nearly 90 rupees. The rupee is down 4.5% since the start of this year. Sensex and Nifty declined for the third straight day in a broad-based sell-off. Heavyweights like Reliance, HDFC, ICICI Bank lead the decline. Mid-caps fare slightly better, but the index ends in the red. Bitcoin suffers the biggest single-day decline in 7 months as the sell-off intensifies. All cryptocurrencies under pressure as investors fret over a new crypto winter. Bitcoin is down 30% from the record high in October. Telecom Minister Sindhya defends the decision ordering smartphone makers to preload the state-owned Sanchar Saathi cybersecurity app. Minister also says users will have the option to disable or delete the app if they wish to do so. Dismisses concerns over snooping or mass surveillance. Smartphone makers are not in favour of the government's directive on Sanchar Saathi app. Industry sources ask why their feedback was not sought and why the Ministry of Electronics was not consulted. Phone makers like Apple, Samsung and Google have no history of preloading apps mandated by the government. It's been 14 months, but the government's incentive scheme to woo Tesla and other electric car makers to make in India has found no takers. Heavy Industries Ministry tells Parliament that car makers' decision to participate in the scheme is contingent on India-EU FTA talks. Adds that the industry has flagged threshold investment requirements and timelines as potential challenges. E-commerce platform Meesho's anchor book sees robust demand. Money Control reports that the book was subscribed over 32 times, led by SBI Mutual Fund, Tiger Global and BlackRock. The IPO opens for retail investors tomorrow. Lok Sabha proceedings disrupted for the second day in a row. Opposition lawmakers raised slogans demanding a discussion on special intensive revision of electoral rolls underway in multiple states. US President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff meets Russian President Putin in Moscow to discuss the Ukraine peace deal. The White House says that the Trump administration is upbeat about a deal to end the war. Russia claims that its forces have captured 2 frontline Ukrainian towns. Death toll in Sri Lanka in the aftermath of Cyclone Ditwa crosses 400. Close to 3 lakh people have been displaced, 750 people killed in floods and landslides on Indonesia's Sumatra Island. Over 3 million have been affected. Former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan is perfectly fine, says his sister after being allowed to meet him in prison. This comes after protests by party leaders and the family who have been denied access to him for the past several weeks. We will come to that and much more in just a bit. But first, to Mint Street. The Indian rupee continues to fall, hitting another record low against the dollar. The currency is inching closer to the 90 mark and has declined nearly 4.5% so far this year. Lata Venkatesh now joins us. Lata, what is the reason behind the steep fall?
The reason why the rupee has been the worst performing currency and why it has fallen with some accelerated pace since mid-November are both the trade deficit and the capital outflows, the capital account deficit. From November 18, the fall has accelerated because that day we realized that the October trade deficit is $41 billion, which means the US trade deal is now beginning to bite. The fact that the trade deal was not signed all through November has kind of accentuated tensions or at least worries within the exporter-importer community as well. And those who have open positions or those who had to buy dollars, importers, are now rushing in to buy, which explains the accelerated fall in the rupee. What we hear from dealers today is that the Reserve Bank doesn't appear to be supporting any level. It is just, graduating the fall so that probably a market-determined cheaper rupee will correct the current account deficit, the trade deficit to some extent. It will make the Indian exporter more competitive, and it will make imports more expensive and thereby protect domestic industry. So it's just allowing the rupee to find its level, but only graduating that fall. An important positive that many dealers pointed out, or at least a few dealers pointed out, is that it's not the Reserve Bank alone which is supplying dollars. Closer to the 90 rupees per dollar mark, even exporters, others are supplying, giving the impression that the market itself feels that things have gone far enough. So the hope is that around the 90 mark, the rupee will have seen a bottom, at least for the near term. But who knows, I could be speaking too soon.
From currency market to equities, Dalal Street witnessed a broad-based fall and ended lower for the third straight day. More than 35 Nifty stocks ended in the red, with heavyweights leading the fall. Sensex dropped over 500 points, while Nifty shed over 140 points. The top story this evening: the government is facing a backlash after the Department of Telecom issued directives to all mobile phone makers to pre-install the state-owned cybersecurity app called Sanchar Saathi. The government claims the app is essential to curb online fraud. Telecom Minister Scindia defended the decision today, citing 22,000 crore rupees were lost to cyber fraud in 2024 alone. But critics argue the app could become a tool for snooping and mass surveillance. In its order dated 28th of November, Telecom Department said that the app must be pre-installed. It also ordered phone makers to ensure the functionalities of the app are not disabled or restricted. The app must be visible and accessible when a new mobile phone is switched on for the first time. Companies were given 90 days to comply with the order and report within 120 days on the progress. Minister Scindia defended the order and cited how opposition parties have been complaining about rising cyber frauds. The minister also said the app can be deleted if the user wants, and the app will lay dormant on the phone if a user chooses not to register. Just yesterday, Minister Scindia had defended the decision to make the app mandatory for all citizens. Here is what Minister Scindia said yesterday to CNBC TV 18 and Today.
So, is this mandatory, and by when do they have to comply, all phone makers in the country?
I believe that this is being issued in the next couple of days, and it will give people time to be able to adopt it.
All right, so it will be mandatory and everybody will have to comply within a certain timeline.
कोई mandatory नहीं है. आप अगर register नहीं करना चाहते हो, मतलब कि उदाहरण के तौर पे इस ऐप का उपयोग नहीं करना चाहते हो, तो रजिस्टर मत करो, वो डॉर्मेंट रहेगा. डिलीट करना है तो डिलीट कर लो.
It is a snooping app. I mean, clearly it's ridiculous. Now where else do they want to, I mean, citizens have their right to privacy. Even all of you must be having a right to privacy, to send your own messages to family, friends, without the government looking at everything.
Is the government?
It's not just one thing. It's not just snooping on the telephones. It's overall. They are turning this country into a dictatorship.
After seeing the uproar, he's come up with this clarification, but I can say one thing: it is not satisfactory simply because this notification needs to be withdrawn. A written word will have more legality than a spoken word in the courts of law. So this has to be withdrawn, redrafted, explained to people that this is not mandatory.
And moving on, smartphone makers are not in favour of the government's directive on Sanchar Saathi app. Industry sources ask why their feedback was not sought and why the Ministry of Electronics was not consulted. The big question that we're asking today is, why has the government made the app mandatory without wider consultation? Rachana Dhanrajani joins us now to take stock of all the developments. Rachana, what is the Sanchar Saathi app? What has it managed to achieve so far? And why is this decision turning out to be so controversial?
The Sanchar Saathi has been active since 2023. So far, the app has been optional, but now the government wants phone makers to pre-install the app on all new devices. The mandate says that it must appear at first switch on, it cannot be deleted at the system level, and phones already in the supply chain will receive the app through a software update. So what has this app done so far? Well, according to the government's website, the app has helped disconnect 1.75 crore fraudulent mobile connections. More than 42 lakh stolen phones have been blocked and 26 lakh devices have been traced, and about 7.5 lakh stolen phones have been recovered and returned. 2.5 lakh reports of scams have been lodged on the website. All this while sharing information on the website, and the app was voluntary. But once this app becomes mandatory, here's what it will be able to access. On Android devices, it can read the IMEI number, which is the unique number of a handset, along with that SIM details, basic device information. Now, if a user reports a fraud attempt, it can access call and SMS logs as well. It also uses the camera and file access when evidence is uploaded and may send an SMS for verification and registration. But on iPhones, permissions are limited to camera and file access only. Now, the published policy says that the app does not take location, microphone input, contact lists, browsing history, or biometric data. But any expansion on what data can be accessed in the future would only require a software update. Now, phone manufacturers have raised practical concerns. The 90-day deadline is difficult because software development, testing and certification cycles take much longer. Apple, known globally for its privacy framework, plans to convey the concerns to the government. Android's global OS principles also do not align with the idea of non-removable system app. This brings up a wider question. Is Sanchar Saathi evolving into a digital Govt for users, as the intention is stated by the government, or does it push the country toward a Big Brother-style environment? Well, the telecom minister has said that the users can opt out of the app. But this adds complexities because Android's rules do not allow governments or manufacturers to add permanent apps with privileged permissions. That's a system that forces installation first and offers an opt-out later, does not match Android's definition of consent, and it does not meet the standard definition of informed consent either. On the legal front, the mandate is being viewed through the triple test that was laid out by the Supreme Court. In a landmark verdict in 2017, a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court made it clear that any invasion of privacy must be done through a legislation. It needs to have a legitimate aim. It needs to have legality, and the action must be proportional. This decision to make Sanchar Saathi app mandatory is not being done through legislation, but rather via an executive action by the telecom department. Stopping cyber fraud is, of course, a legitimate aim, but is a mandatory app on all smartphones the only way to crack down on cyber fraud? Is the action proportional to the issue in question? That is what we'll be looking forward to.
At 9:30 p.m., we will bring you a deep dive into the Sanchar Saathi controversy. Is this app a safety measure or a surveillance risk? Top cybersecurity experts, lawyers and parliamentarians weigh in on this big debate. Making the Sanchar Saathi app mandatory is just one way the government is hoping to address cyber fraud. The Department of Telecom has mandated SIM-binding rules. These rules make a SIM card mandatory to access over-the-top communication apps like WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal and others. The Broadband India Forum, which counts WhatsApp and its parent company Meta as its members, has opposed the decision. In a statement, the forum said, and I quote, "The Telecommunications Act does not authorize the regulation of OTT communication platforms, nor does it provide the legislative basis to impose telecom-style operational mandates upon them," end of quote. Speaking to CNBC TV 18 yesterday, Telecom Minister Scindia made it clear that the SIM-binding mandate will not be put on hold.
This is with regard to the SIM binding initiative that you've just launched. And this is for all messaging apps such as WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal. All of them have to comply with the SIM binding norms within 90 days. Why has this been done? And what is the larger intention? Because the industry is saying that there should be a pause on this for some time to allow for wider consultation.
In the last fiscal alone, people across the length and breadth of our country have lost close to 22,800 crores to cyber fraud. It is my responsibility as telecom minister to protect my consumers. And this indeed is a step towards that. As far as consultation is concerned, we've had 5 to 6 rounds of consultation, starting in early April into June, latest even close to November. Across the board, there has been a clarion call for this.
The government has not received a single application for the EV manufacturing scheme. The incentive scheme to woo Tesla and other electric car makers was announced 14 months ago. The Heavy Industries Ministry told the Parliament that car makers' decision to participate in the scheme is contingent on India-EU FTA talks. The government added that the industry has flagged threshold investment requirements and timelines as potential challenges. Meanwhile, sources have said that the deadline for the scheme expired in October. The electric car manufacturing scheme will remain in effect for 5 years, but Sources also indicating to CNBC that the government may consider accepting applications in future in case car manufacturers show interest in the scheme. E-commerce platform Meesho has received robust demand from domestic and international investors. According to a money control report, the company's anchor book was oversubscribed more than 32 times and attracted bids worth more than 80,000 crore rupees. SBI Mutual Fund, along with Tiger Global and BlackRock, led the bids for the 2,400 crore anchor tranche. The initial public offering will open for retail investors tomorrow. Shares of Swiggy jumped over 2% in trade. This after a Bloomberg report suggested that the quick commerce giant plans to launch a $1.1 billion qualified institutional placement next week. According to Bloomberg, the company has shortlisted 3 banks to manage the share sale. Remember, the company's board has approved the fundraise on the 7th of November. Wockhardt expects sales of its new antibiotic, Xenic, to hit $2 billion after the US FDA formally accepted its application for the drug. Speaking to CNBC TV 18, Wockhardt chairman said the drug could be approved by mid-2026.
We expect that our drug should do about $1 billion or $2 billion of usage worldwide. US generally contributes 40% of the global market. So the Western market will contribute about 75% plus of the global revenue, and the balance will come from the other countries.
And shares of Bajaj Housing Finance fell to a 52-week low after 2.35% of its equity changed hands in a block deal sale. Worth almost 1,900 crore rupees was exchanged at 97 rupees per share. The company said that its promoter Bajaj Finance will sell up to 2% of stake to comply with minimum public shareholding requirements. Bajaj Finance held 88.7% stake at the end of September quarter. Moving on, promoters of IT services giant Mastech is exploring a sale of around 20% stake in the company. Sources have said that the promoters are seeking a premium of up to 25% over the current market price. The promoters currently hold around 36% stake in Mastech. Shares of the company rose over 4% in trade on the back of the development, however, ended the day flat. The offer for sale for Bank of Maharashtra for non-retail investors has opened today. The floor price for the OFS has been set at 54 rupees per share, and this is a 6.3% discount from yesterday's closing price. The government plans to divest 6% stake in the bank. At this floor price, the government will mop up nearly 2,500 crore rupees. US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has confirmed that the general tariff rate for South Korea will be brought down to 15%. This will be effective retroactively from the 1st of November. This announcement has come after South Korea introduced a legislation in parliament to implement its strategic investment commitments. In a social media post, Lutnick said that the move will unlock full benefit of South Korea's trade deal with the United States. South Korean auto stocks rallied on the back of this development. And speaking of trade deals, the US and Britain have announced a deal to secure zero tariffs on British pharma products for at least 3 years. Under the agreement, UK will spend around 25% more on new treatments. UK drug firms have also committed to investing more in the US and create more jobs. Amidst the uncertainty over a trade deal between India and the United States, the Indian government is hoping to provide some relief for exporters. Sources say government is likely to propose a special economic zones bill in the parliament to help exporters tackle global uncertainties. Abhimanyu Sharma filed this report earlier.
Government sources have told CNBC TV 18 that India is likely to come up with an SEZ bill in parliament to help exporters, many of which, particularly in labor-intensive sectors, have been facing headwinds since the past few months due to a decline in the total number of orders and geopolitical uncertainties, which runs the risk of job losses for many employees working with these exporters. Also, many exporters, many export units, particularly in labor-intensive sectors, have already cut down on their production, and they they run the risk of job losses. Now, to mitigate the problems which are being faced by these exporters, the government is likely to come up with such a bill which will allow sale of goods produced by these export units into the domestic market on a duty foregone basis. The SEZs will maintain their net foreign exchange positive status, and a reverse job work will also be allowed as per the proposed bill. It remains to be seen how early the government is going to come up with any such bill and how early any such move is going to come into effect. Also, government sources have assured that there would be no loss to the prospects of domestic manufacturers, since already several exporters, several brands who have units stationed across several countries, including India's FTA partner countries, prefer to source goods, particularly labor-intensive goods, from FTA partner countries instead of India's own SEZs. So there would be no net loss to the prospects for domestic manufacturers.
And coming up on India Business Hour, Bitcoin suffers the biggest single-day decline in 7 months as the sell-off intensifies. More details in just a bit. And you can also catch all CNBC TV 18's news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X and Jio Hotstar. Do subscribe to CNBC TV 18 Access for exclusive stories. You're watching India Business Hour. The World Health Organization has urged countries to make weight loss drugs such as Mounjaro more accessible to tackle rising cases of obesity. The UN agency flagged that the drugs are currently only available to 1 in 10 of those who really need them. The organization also highlighted that the effectiveness of the medication and asked drugs companies to lower prices. However, it also warned that a healthy diet and exercise was still needed even with the drugs. On to the crypto market action. Bitcoin suffered the biggest single-day decline in 7 months as the sell-off intensified. The crypto has fallen 30% from its record high in October. The whole crypto market has fallen 20% in the last 30 days. Market cap has fallen below the $3 trillion mark. This comes as investors fret over a new crypto winter. Manisha Gupta is here with more details on the decline in Bitcoin prices.
Well, thank you so much for that. Yes, when you look at the crypto markets overall, we are looking at very sharp declines onto this one. If you look at the overnight markets itself, it has been the biggest single-day decline that we have seen since the month of March. And with that, the overall crypto market cap has declined quite sharply to below $3 trillion as well. In this year itself, we did see $4.4 trillion of an all-time high. And from those kind of levels, it has been a sharp decline. So when you look at Bitcoin sell-off, it has been to the tune of $16 million. And overall decline, when you look at crypto exchange liquidations, has been quite sharp to the tune of $400 million in the overnight markets there. Well, there has been decline in futures volumes and open interest as well, telling you that the money clearly seems to be rotating out of cryptos into other asset classes. AI, some people feel as well, is where this money is flowing out. Well, interestingly, the kind of sell-off that we have seen has resumed for the month of December. It is about the risk of sentiment in the broader markets, which also seems to be impacting this decline. It also has to do with the shares in digital asset-related stocks within the Asian markets, which have been declining. And this has happened after People's Bank of China has warned about the illegal activities relating to digital currencies therein. If you look at the overall market, well, the Bank of Japan may hike rates as bond yields hit a 15-year highs. This has been one major reason that you have seen crypto see a slip and slide therein. It also has to do with the large leverage positions that we are looking at in the international markets, with the expectation that it still is a long in crypto, quite a bit long. And if it starts to come off, then there's a lot of money still invested into this space. So when you talk about Bitcoin exchanges, there's a leverage of around 200 times still in work there. Outstanding positions of around $787 billion is what we're looking at in overall crypto markets. And when it comes to crypto ETFs, well, the holding therein also is at around $135 billion. So there is still a lot of money invested within that space. It's about the last 1 month that the decline has been quite sharper, really. So when you look at Bitcoin, Ethereum or Polygon, this is the highest market cap that you have in various of these cryptos. They have seen a decline anywhere between 19 to 29%. And the list just goes on, because when you look at Solana, Cardano, Binance, these are again major big names as well. You have seen a decline of anywhere between 10 to 30% on them in the last 1 month as well. So we are now in the red, not just on a weekly basis, monthly basis, but YTD as well.
All right, let's move on to the stormy start that the winter session of Parliament has had so far. Proceedings in the Lok Sabha were disrupted for the second day in a row. The House was adjourned for the day with hardly any business being transacted. Opposition lawmakers raised slogans demanding a discussion on special intensive revision of electoral rolls underway in multiple states. Parliamentary Affairs ministers said that the government was ready for a discussion on electoral reforms, but only after a discussion on the 150th anniversary of Vande Mataram, India's national song.
इस बात पे सहमति हो पाया है कि मंडे को लोकसभा में वंदे मातरम के 150 साल पूरे होने पर हम विशेष चर्चा करेंगे। उसके बाद ट्यूसडे को मंगलवार को लोकसभा में इलेक्शन रिफॉर्म्स को लेकर के हम दिन भर चर्चा करेंगे।
In international news, Russian President Vladimir Putin is meeting U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff today in Moscow. The White House has said that the Trump administration is upbeat about a deal to end the war. The Kremlin has claimed that Russian forces have captured 2 frontline Ukrainian cities. Kyiv has denied that the cities had fallen, saying that its forces continue to hold back Russia's advances. And speaking of Russia, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says Russia and India need to build a relationship that is free of any influence from any third country. He added that Russia cannot interfere between India and US's diplomatic relations. Addressing a press conference, Peskov also said that decline in India's imports of Russian oil may last only for a brief period. Remember, Russian President Vladimir Putin is scheduled to fly down to New Delhi on Thursday.
It's rather a question of bilateral relationship between India and the United States. We cannot interfere in that. And we don't have the slightest intention in doing that. And we understand that there is a pressure. There is a pressure over India. Actually, this is the reason that we have to be very careful in creating an architecture of our relationship that must be free of any influence coming from third countries.
The death toll from Cyclone Ditwa in Sri Lanka has crossed 400. More than 1 million people have been affected and over 200,000 are now in shelters. The Sri Lankan president said that the island is battling the largest natural disaster it has ever seen. The opposition staged a walkout in the Sri Lankan parliament today after accusing the government of blocking a debate on urgent policy measures on the disaster situation. The death toll from flooding and landslides across Indonesia has crossed 750. Officials have said that over 1 million people have been evacuated from affected areas. Arterial roads continue to remain blocked, hindering rescue operations across high-risk areas. Former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan is perfectly fine, says his sister, after being allowed to meet him in prison. This comes after protests by party leaders and the family who have been denied access to him for the past several weeks.
सेहत अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह ठीक है, मगर दिन में वो उन्होंने बड़े गुस्से में थे, कहते हैं कि हमें ये मेंटल टॉर्चर कर रहे हैं और सारा दिन कमरे में बंद, थोड़ा सा बाहर से निकल सकते हैं, कोई किसी से कम्युनिकेशन नहीं, कहते हैं कि आसिम मुनीर जिम्मेदार है, ये सब कुछ हो रहा है.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you for watching. The news continues right here on CNBC TV 18.